Well, I think there's well-documented cases that these corporations and in these free trade zones there's massive human rights abuses from, for instance, there was a woman here from Colombia recently who works in the flower industry, and she was saying that still today the practice of forced sterilization among women is very common. They're not allowed to use bathrooms oftentimes, forced to work under really strenuous conditions, standing on their feet for up to 20 hours, also in really extreme conditions of either heat or cold.
Well, what's going on right now and why sweatshop conditions prevail is because brands demand prices from the factories that can only be met with sweatshop conditions. So it's like not paying overtime, not having fire extinguishers, not having ventilation, having wages that you can't live on very well. You'd have to work long hours to be able to do basic things like feed, clothe, and housing, let alone cover medical expenses or invest in education. A lot of times what happens is a worker gets injured, they have to work more to pay for the medical treatments than take time off to properly heal.
It means we need to also step up and increase our strategic way of thinking and how can we better hold the corporations accountable for what they're doing and how they're treating their workers, and not let them get away with, creating this race to the bottom for the lowest wage and the worst job.
Bueno, es importante luchar por la defensa de los derechos humanos porque cualquier injusticia cometida contra cualquier persona en cualquier parte del mundo es una ofensa a la misma humanidad.
These sort of policy agreements set the stage for all sorts of human rights abuses, and they validate the corporations over the well-being of the people that work there, and they encourage the movement of capital and goods and not the movement of people, which I always think is pretty interesting in this day when immigration is a very hot topic, that these corporations and businesses, they can go wherever they want and they can exploit whatever they want. And then when they've destroyed a community and the people have nothing left to do but leave where they're from to try to make any sort of money, then we criminalize these people for doing that, as opposed to criminalizing the corporations that go in there in the first place and just ravage these countries. So I think it's sort of, there's a term in Spanish that's called this patas arriba, which means like upside down world. Like the world is backwards. Like instead of criminalizing immigrants who've crossed over the border, that really the people who should be criminalized are these CEOs who are making billions of dollars off the exploitation of workers in Central and South America.
Consumers should be very concerned about where their products are coming from and how they're being made, and not just that, but like how are those, do you want to be wearing shoes that you were known were made by someone who's working under slave-like conditions, Is that something that we want to be, oh, I'm going to go to the store and buy some slave shoes, Children are producing a great majority of the shoes that we wear and the clothes that we wear, And children are even more easy to exploit, I mean, I think, within the scale that they're not going to know their rights. Most of us don't even know our rights, but there's less likely that a child will know their rights, and they're easier to manipulate and control. And from the company's perspective in these zones, that they're disposable, so they can use them and they'll get more out of them because they're little, and then it's not really their concern, like their development as people or the society.
We don't need to use sweatshops to produce our clothes. We can still use the factories, but the factories can be the source of livelihoods for developing countries rather than a point of exploitation.
I think one of the main points of this is education, because I like to believe that most people, if they knew that their shirt came at the cost of, a small child working for 18 hours a day and not having bathroom breaks, that they would make another decision, But I think because of the distance and the separation, people don't realize.